Ibrahim Traoré explains the danger Africa faces. Next. Hello everyone, and welcome back. What happens when warnings are ignored long enough that they stop sounding like warnings and start sounding like preparation? What happens when leaders stop speaking in slogans and begin speaking in metaphors meant to wake people up? At a recent gathering of the Alliance of Sahel States, Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso delivered a message that immediately divided opinion. Some called it dramatic. Others dismissed it as symbolic language. But very few paused to ask a more important question. Why now? He spoke of a coming black winter, not as a forecast meant to frighten, but as a signal meant to prepare. A way of describing what happens when pressure from the outside meets division on the inside, and when a continent hesitates at the very moment unity is required. Tonight, we're going to unpack what that message really means, and why it wasn't aimed at enemies abroad, but at Africa itself. Stay with me. Dear friends, when Ibrahim Traoré spoke of a black winter, he was not predicting a season. He was describing a convergence, a moment when several forces, political, economic, and social, arrive at the same time and test whether societies have learned from history or are prepared to repeat it. Winter, in his language, was consequence, not destiny. He framed it as something being prepared for West Africa, not something that arrives on its own. And the reason it can arrive, he argued, is not strength from outside, but weakness within. That distinction sits at the core of his message. Throughout the speech, Traoré relied on imagery rather than instruction. Fire, mountains, shelter. These were not poetic choices, they were strategic symbols. Fire represented unity, shared awareness, shared purpose, a common understanding that allows people to gather around something larger than themselves. Mountains represented institutions, structures built slowly to shield communities from external pressure. And shelter represented the protection earned through struggle, not given freely. But then came the uncomfortable part. Traoré argued that these defenses are not only attacked from the outside, they are quietly weakened from within. When unity is forming, some pour water on the fire. When institutions are being built, some break the stones. When protection is finally achieved, some who oppose the struggle suddenly seek to benefit from it. This internal sabotage, he suggested, is what makes the coming period dangerous. For American audiences, this framing may sound abstract, but the logic is familiar. No system collapses solely because of external pressure. It collapses when internal cohesion fails under stress. Traoré's warning then widened in scope. He pointed to how unrest has been encouraged, amplified, and redirected in the past, often under the language of reform, progress, or correction. He referenced earlier periods in other regions where sudden political upheaval promised renewal but delivered fragmentation. The lesson was not that change is bad. The lesson was that unmanaged change, fueled by division, rarely benefits the people living through it. This is where media enters the picture. Traoré spoke bluntly about information as a battlefield. Not all voices that claim to speak people, he argued, actually strengthen the people. Some inflame emotions, sharpen divisions, and turn frustration inward, community against community, while the real beneficiaries remain elsewhere. In this framing, chaos is not accidental. It is useful. When societies are busy arguing internally, attention shifts away from resources, from contracts, from long-term decisions that shape decades. Noise becomes a distraction. Division becomes cover. This is why Traoré repeatedly asked a simple but unsettling question. Why do we make it so easy to turn against each other? The Black Winter, as he described it, is not defined by one event. It is defined by a sequence: pressure, confusion, division, exhaustion. And once that sequence takes hold, people are left with limited choices. He reduced those choices to two paths. One is unity, difficult, disciplined, often slow but protective. The other is resignation, accepting external direction as inevitable and internal conflict as normal. History, he implied, shows where the second path leads. Yet despite the severity of his language, Traoré did not call for retaliation. This is often overlooked. He emphasized calm, restraint, strategic communication. He warned against emotional reactions that play into destabilizing narratives. In his view, discipline is not weakness, it is defense. This is a crucial point. Many speeches that warn of danger also encourage confrontation. This one did the opposite. It called for patience, coordination, and clarity of purpose. That approach aligns with the broader direction of the Alliance of Sahel States. The AES has been steadily moving from reaction to construction, building institutions, aligning policies, and creating shared frameworks that reduce vulnerability. In this context, the mountains Traore described are not theoretical. They are the alliance itself. Regional coordination, shared defense, economic planning, communication platforms. These are not dramatic gestures. They are slow, stabilizing forces, and they are precisely what make destabilization harder. Traore also expanded the warning beyond West Africa. He suggested that what is unfolding is not confined to one sub-region. Competition over resources, influence, and alignment is intensifying across the continent. Where unity exists, pressure increases. Where division persists, consequences accelerate. For viewers in the United States, this moment challenges a common narrative. African political discourse is often portrayed as reactive, emotional, or fragmented. What Traore presented was something else entirely, a strategic assessment delivered through metaphor to bypass denial. He acknowledged imperfection. He admitted progress is uneven, but he insisted movement matters more than comfort. Standing still, in his view, is no longer neutral. It is dangerous. Perhaps the most revealing part of the speech was its tone toward the future. Traore did not promise ease. He did not guarantee stability. He offered confidence in people, not in circumstances. Confidence that manipulation no longer works the way it once did. Confidence that awareness, once reached, cannot easily be reversed. Confidence that unity, even when tested, can endure. This is why the Black Winter message unsettled so many. It did not flatter. It did not reassure. It demanded maturity. It asked Africans and those watching to recognize patterns before consequences arrive, to choose preparation over surprise, and to understand that sovereignty is not only defended at borders, but in minds, institutions, and relationships between people. So when Ibrahim Traoré spoke of a coming winter, he was not inviting fear. He was demanding responsibility. His message was not about collapse, but about choice, about whether societies prepare together or fracture under pressure, about whether unity is treated as a slogan or as a discipline practiced daily. The warning was clear. Danger does not announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly through division, distraction, and delay. What happens next will depend on whether this moment is treated as prophecy or as preparation. Because history shows us one thing with consistency. When people recognize the storm before it arrives, winter does not have to define the future. Thank you for watching.